everybody. We are so excited today. We are here talking the latest 2 episodes of Star Trek Discovery. There's Saints of Imperfection and Sound of Thunder, episodes 5 and 6 of the season. Can you believe that we're already at halfway point of the season, Tom?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's going by fast. This show is just, it just moves really quick.
I know. I can't even believe it. It's just like we just started. But yeah, so we were a bit mixed, I think, on the last 2 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
But at least for me, I felt like these were both better. That I enjoyed both these episodes. I thought they were.
Yeah, no, me too. Yeah, lots of solid Star Trek in there, and my ideas on this show are developing, and so I'm eager to share my thoughts.
Oh, great. Well, that's great. So yeah, let's dive in. So the first episode we'll talk about is Saints of Imperfection. And so this was an interesting episode. It starts out with Tilly being in the mycelial blob alien thing. I don't know what you called it.
Like it's like a pod or something. Yeah.
Yeah, cocoon, I think is what they called it.
Right.
And so yeah, her kind of plot line is she's sort of lost in the mycelial network, and May is there in the network. And basically, like, May is a rep from the network that they're
a species that live within the network. Yeah, it's like their
right.
universe. Yeah.
And they turned her into May because they thought that it would be more comfortable for Tilly, which is sort of a little bit strange, because again, you think that they would turn her into a child May that Tilly knew. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I guess, did she say, like, my name is May? How did Tilly even know? I can't remember.
I forget how she found out her name was May.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I remember now. It at one point, this alien posing as May calls her Stilly at one point, like she's silly. So it was like a nickname in school. She called her Stilly, and that's what made Tilly go, wait a second, what did you call me? And then she looked. She had to kind of like rack her brain a little bit to remember where she heard that before and what she remembered that from. And she came up with, oh, this friend of mine from school.
Yeah, I mean, because if I saw an adult of somebody that I had known for like a year, I think, or 6 months or something, like very short period of time in middle school, I mean, I wouldn't know them from anything.
I guess it kind of depends on who they are to you. You know, there's people I barely know at all that I'd spot from across Safeco Field. On the other hand, there are people I was good friends with that would take me a second. So it's weird.
I just think they would have picked like her mother or somebody like that. You know what I mean? Like, it's sort of,
well, for the purposes of the drama, they had to have someone who could plausibly be a crew member, whom she wasn't hallucinating, but was actually there. Because they were just fooling Tilly. They were fooling us too.
Yeah, that's true. I really liked the look of the mycelial network. I thought it looked really cool.
Yeah, it looked adequately alien and weird.
Yeah, I liked it. I mean, that's the nice thing about this show, is that they definitely splurge all over the place. They definitely spent money on. That's why I wonder if we're going to get a season 3, because I think this show, I don't think it's done super great this season, and it's not cheap.
I don't keep any kind of reading on how well it's doing in the ratings. Is it kind of suffering this year, or is it just kind of a downturn?
I mean, I don't think we know, kind of like Netflix, we don't know the ratings of the CBS All Access, but I just feel like I'm not even hearing people even talk that much negatively about it. I feel like it's just like not even really made, like, a bunch of the sort of the YouTubers and bloggers and stuff that I had followed on season 1 aren't even covering it this year. I don't know. So maybe it's just my little bubble. But it just doesn't seem like it's made much of a cultural impact either way, and that people are really talking about it that
Well,
much.
let's be, let's face it though. Let's face some realities here about Star Trek. And Star Trek is a niche interest thing, and yeah, it is very profitable, and it's been very profitable for the people involved. But the people who want to watch it have found it and are watching it. They're not, and that's kind of a risk they're taking with all access, is that
Right.
it's going to be a little harder for new fans to run across it and get into it.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? We'll see. But I
Yeah.
don't know. I kind of wonder, because it seems like a very expensive show, but who knows? Anyway, but I thought it looked really pretty and cool, and
Yeah, no doubt about that.
so I appreciated that. And so then you have basically this idea that there is this vicious toxin, I guess, invading the mycelial network that is trying to destroy it.
Yeah, May is talking about a monster that's spewing toxins and ruining their.
Yeah, and a character we'll talk about later on. It says that they end up covering themselves with tree bark because it saves them from getting destroyed by this invader. So I don't know. It's an interesting thing, and so basically, Stamets comes up with this idea of that they're going to do a partial jump so that they can enter the network, they can save Tilly, and it will be great. Yeah, what did you think of this plan?
Yeah, no, I like I enjoy when Star Trek does this. Like it's so crazy it just might work kind of stuff. Like that's fun to me.
Yeah, it was pretty good. So yeah, and they're gonna save Tilly, and they make this kind of half jump, and
Which looked awesome. I loved how it was kind of
yeah.
looked like it was half dipped into this netherworld or whatever. Like it was
Right.
weird.
And I think they said that they only would have like an hour, or there was a limited time period that they would be able to be in the network.
Well, yeah, because the ecosystem was of the mycelial network is entirely hostile to anything from their universe, so it starts eating Discovery.
Mm-hmm. Right. So yeah, the pores start attacking the Discovery, and so that's sort of the first setup for the first part of the plot. And then the other plot, we have Georgio tracking Spock for suspected murder, and in this it's this group 31,
Section 31.
section 31 that they're part of, and so we kind of got that going on. The thing, they actually see Spock's ship. It turns out that Georgio's on the ship, not Spock, and so they're trying to find where he is. And then we also get this new 31 network, 31 new boss named Leland.
Yeah, he's the captain of the Section 31 ship.
Yes, and I forgot to write down who that actor was, but I liked him. I think he could be an interesting foil from. It's Alan Van Sprang is his name. I feel like I've seen him and stuff. Anyway, I feel like he could be an interesting counterbalance to Pike. I felt like they had an interesting dynamic to me.
Yeah, they did, and I liked that they were kind of old friends, and that made things interesting. And honestly, I think you're going to see more of them. They are planning a Section 31 spinoff of Discovery, so that the set of the ship that they're on and stuff like that. The big expensive set with like 2 stories or something like this. It's just massive, right? And all these other characters, they're definitely setting you up for another series. So I'm glad you like the character, because you'll probably be seeing more of them.
Oh, good. That is good. I'm trying to look and see where I've seen him before. But anyway, he's always on Being Erica, which is a really fun little show. Um, anyway, so yeah, I liked him. I think that he was pretty charismatic of actor, and I just thought he did a good job. And him and Pike. So that's kind of the start of that. They're following these 7 signals, trying to. There's also this whole Red Angel thing that we will find out more about in the next episode.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about it a little bit, but anyway, that they're also trying to follow, that Spock was following and involved with. So there's all of that going on. And so they when they are in the mycelial network trying to save Tilly, they shockingly find a surprise thing, the one I was talking about with the bark. It is Dr. Culber, of all people,
Mm-hmm.
that is in the mycelial network. And May at first is going to kill Culber, but then Tilly tells her to not do it, and she says, if you kill it, it will ruin you. So what did you think about this with Culber?
Yeah, he got better. So
he was killed by Tyler,
mm-hmm.
And snapping his neck. But is this basically a version of Culber from when they would do all the jumps somehow?
I don't know. I mean, yeah. From what I gathered from the next episode, yeah, he is himself, but he's not. Like
Right.
it reconstituted his. They managed to reconstitute him, and that there's a theory actually that transporters already do this. That transporters kill you and then put you back together.
Right.
And they're saying, well, that's basically what happened to him, but it's he doesn't seem entirely comfortable with it.
Yeah. Did you like this? Did you not like it?
I think as a dramatic choice, I think it might have been better if he tragically could not come back. Like if they found him, but tragically he couldn't come back.
Right.
And if they had just stayed there, because that broke my heart in a good way. That. And so like I was on board with that result. Like I was sad, of course, but I liked that I liked how it's made me sad. I liked how it sort of tugged at my heartstrings.
I mean, it's kind of like Marvel. Nobody dies in a Marvel movie.
Well, or any comic book ever. The only Marvel character who's stayed dead is Uncle Ben.
Right. It's true. DC, it's the Waynes. The only ones.
Yeah, exactly. And even then, Thomas Wayne comes back. But yeah, anyway.
Yeah, that's true. I kind of agree with you. It felt a little cheap to me, but whatever. Obviously this is very alarming for Stamets, of course. They're all talking about thermodynamics. They kind of lost me there. I was like, I don't know what's going on. But
yeah, wibbly wobbly, timey wimey. Yeah. A lot of that is just nonsense, pseudoscientific nonsense anyway. Right. It just adds a little bit of the flavor of these are real scientists in space doing science. So
yeah. And so at first Culber can't cross over from the network, and they say something like, our matter is not your matter, and he tells I think it's Stamets, he tells that you have to let me go.
Mm-hmm.
So they're trying to bring Culber back through the cocoon, but they'll lose the connection to the mycelial network, but they are able to basically do that. But what happens to basically May and all of that? Do we know now that they're separated?
I think May is. She accomplished what she wanted to accomplish, which was to stop the ecological destruction taking place inside the network. At least that's in the short term. That's what I gather. And they didn't really pause at all to talk about like, wait, does this mean we can't use the spore drive anymore? Or
Right.
we didn't get any of that.
How did they stop it? I can't remember.
Well, they got out of there. They
just
stopped doing the damage. They got Cobra. How did they get Cobra back?
So,
they got Cobra out of there with another "It's so crazy it just might work" kind of plan, and that stopped the monster that May was so worried about.
Yeah. So, okay. So was Cobra the monster?
He was it. Mm-hmm.
He was it. Yeah. Okay. It was a little confusing, some of this stuff. All right. Very good. And then obviously, we see him there, and it's very, Stamets is very, upset, I guess. And as you would be. At the same time, we also have Tyler that is on the bridge. Like things are so panicking that he ends up basically working for the Discovery again, and so there's some dynamic between Pike and Tyler.
Yeah, they're kind of they're definitely not best buds.
No. And I did have to laugh because the Devin Maloney, who does the Vulture recaps, he's really funny. His one on this one, he's not a fan of the man bun for Tyler.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yes, he had some funny lines in his thing.
Well, the guy is from Seattle.
He says here that let's see here. Let me find it. He says that especially for it'll be especially for Burnham, who certainly doesn't have enough emotional whiplash to deal with this right now. Though I suppose if they get together again, she could cut his man bun off in his sleep and put us all out of our misery. Which I thought was pretty funny.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, I think they get rid of the man bun in the next episode, which was a good move.
Yeah.
So, so they basically then they continue to follow the 7 signals, and we get a hint that this could all lead to time travel, and that could be what Spock is involved with. And we get to see Cornwell comes back, Admiral Cornwell, and
good to see her again.
Yes. And so she basically tells the Pike and Leland that they need to man up and get along and kiss and make up so they can investigate this thing. And so then they apologize, and so that was pretty fun. And we also get Georgio telling Burnham to trust her for once, which was interesting because she's obviously kind of a villain. So she shouldn't trust her, but is she going to trust her? So that was kind of your the end of the episode. What is she going to do? So.
Well, yeah. One thing though about this, this goes to Culber being the monster in the Mycelial Network. That in Star Trek, there's exceptions to this, of course, but in Star Trek, the recurring theme is that a monster is a best friend with bad manner, a future best friend with bad manners.
It is going to be that dynamic between Georgio and Burnham, and see how it plays out will be interesting. And this whole idea of time travel and what is Spock doing? Are you surprised they haven't introduced Spock yet?
Boy, yeah, they're really teasing it, aren't they?
They sure
are. Yeah, I'm a little surprised that it's taken this long, but and yet it's not like they're trying to get us to forget about them, and then so they can surprise us with them later.
Right.
I think it looks like we're going to get them next episode. So we don't have we're not going to be waiting forever. But yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see how. Yeah, it's interesting what they're doing with it.
Yeah, I think it has. I mean, I love time travel stories and dimensions and stuff, like episodes. So I'm excited to see what happens with that. It'll be fun.
Okay.
So, all right. So that was a pretty solid episode. And then we had the Sound of Thunder, which was episode 6. And this is almost all Saru's episode. And I think Doug Jones and team do a really good job with this whole one. We find out, because of course we found out last time that a lot of the things that Saru had thought about his Kelpian race weren't actually true. There was this whole idea that you had, I forget what they called it,
the great balance.
Yeah, the great balance. But there was a whole thing that they thought that once you had your sort of time, that you would die, and so he was surprised when he told her to cut off his ganglia, that because he thought he was dying, and then he'd ended up not dying, and realizing that actually wasn't real, that was a myth told them by these captors of theirs. And so we find out a lot about Saru's backstory here, how he became a member of Starfleet, and we also find out more about his race and the enslavement and all of that. And it's really good. I think I really liked it.
It was cool to kind of get. We have a character who's a bit of an outsider. Yeah. He's the only one of his kind in Starfleet, and that's kind of a Star Trek staple. We get a lot of that. Odo in Deep Space Nine, and Spock, of course, and Data. So like, there's always like that question of like, where did this oddball come from? And this is definitely one of the more interesting origins.
Yeah, it's Vihari. That's what they called it. It was this idea that your tissue would, and then once you reach Vihari, that you would die.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's what it's called, Vihari. And so they've kind of repressed. They talk about their fear responses have been repressed. And then you get this signal from Kaminar, which is Saru's home world. And there's the Kelpians and the Baul.
Baul,
that are the enemies of the Kelpians that are enslaving them. And so Georgio is kind of been recruited. She was one of the ones who helped recruit Saru originally, and we find out that he had basically that he had basically like sent this kind of signal, and that the Starfleet had found it, and there's this whole idea of that the Kelpians believe in this great balance, and that there has to be this sort of balance between the Baulus and the Kelpians in order for them to not be like basically destroyed, that there has to be this great balance. And it's really interesting. They end up going on the planet. First, Pike doesn't want to send Saru because it would just be too personal for him, I guess.
Yeah, he was afraid that Saru would be an unstable element.
But he insists, and Burnham is supportive.
Yeah, that was a tense scene.
Yeah, and especially if you think about the fact that Pike kind of took over Saru's position, that he had been working as captain before Pike came. And so they go on the planet, and I liked the whole design of the planet. I thought it looked pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, Saru's sister is there, and they're all looking for the Red Angel that's going to save them. They're looking for a savior, a sign. And there's this whole sort of religion, and the Baul are like making earthquakes and controlling them through all of these different things.
Mm-hmm.
Which
now the Red Angel doesn't have anything to do with the Baul and their control over the Kelpians.
but they
So
were
they're like
looking for a savior, though, right?
I don't think they knew what it was. It's like I don't think they knew any better than Discovery did what it was. That's my understanding, but I could be mistaken on that.
Well, maybe they weren't looking for the Red Angel in specific, but they were looking for a savior, right?
I don't know if they were looking for a savior. In the end, it does end up being a savior in a weird way because it stops the Baul from committing genocide again.
Right. So yeah, Saru and Burnham they go back up to the ship after kind of checking out what's going on, and the Baul are really mad, and they know that one of them has been taken, and they're upset, and so Saru is obviously very concerned about this, that now he's going to ruin this balance that they had achieved, because now they know he's gone. He's talking with Michael, and he says to Burnham, he says, "Would you not do the same for your brother?" And to go back.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's gone. And so the Baulu end up restraining Saru, and there's like this goo. And what did you think of the Baulu gooey guy? I don't know what to call it.
I was kind of holding my breath for a reveal of an alien we've already met, and a couple of reasons for that. They go down to Saru's old village, his own hometown, and there's this pylon there. It's like this sort of floating obelisk-looking kind of thing.
Yeah.
What I liked about that is that it had a very original series kind of look to it. Like it looked like something that you'd see in the original series, and that little touch was nice. But it also reminded me of a Tholian ship, and from other series, and the way the Baul had this sort of scary voice on the comm, the way their language translated was freaky.
Uh-huh.
And that also reminded me of the Tholian. So I was sort of holding my breath for a reveal that they were actually, or something like that, but I didn't get that.
Uh-huh. It did kind of remind me a little bit of the episode a few episodes ago with the whole religion cult planet thing. I don't know. I forget what that was called.
Let's see, what was that? Oh, you pulled it out of my head.
Yeah.
The planet where the humans had been brought and they had a church set up and everything.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It kind of reminded me a little bit of that whole situation. But yeah, so this goo, I called him the goo man.
Yeah.
In my notes. I didn't know what to call him. But I thought he looked pretty cool. I enjoyed it. And they I guess that basically the Baulu had destroyed any of the sort of evolved Kelpians, and they had just to try to control them, and they created this idea of the great balance. It kind of reminds me a little bit of in the allegory of the cave, Plato talks about the philosopher kings and the noble lie, sort of. I feel like it's sort of a variation kind of on that idea of you've got to tell them this sort of noble lie in order to give them supposedly the create the most happiness, or the most, and so we're going to talk about this great balance.
Yeah, that's a good connection. I hadn't thought of that, but yeah, sort of the comforting lies that the state or that the church can sometimes tell you to sort of maintain order.
Yeah. So the Saru is like handcuffed to the wall, restrained, and he all of a sudden becomes like the Hulk or something. It's pretty cool. He's like, boom, and he breaks the restraints. He saves his sister, and he kind of announces this great balance must end, and that at one point he says the Kelpians were once the predators, and so we must demonstrate to the Baulu we are not bad. They must face our evolved race and where they're at. And he says, we will prove to them we can overcome our rage and create a new balance.
Yeah, that's interesting stuff. Very Star Trek.
Yes, that's very Star Trek for sure. And so there ends up being this whole Balu base that's underneath the water that comes out, and so the Starfleet wants to engage in a new balance. They want to try to but then they attack, and that's when they see the Red Angel.
So the Red Angel kind of is a Deus Ex Machina to kind of put a stop to the genocide that the Ba'ul are about to commit.
Yes, and it's seen as a savior, and that's able to help kind of create this new balance. And this is what Spock has seen. He knows about the Red Angel or in his drawings and his things, and he's looking for it. And so that's a lot of stuff. What do you think about all that?
So they start speculating that the Red Angel. So one thing you need to mention is that Saru gets a close look at the Red Angel, and it looks like a humanoid in a technological suit or something.
Yeah.
And so that adds a new wrinkle to it, right? So we know we're probably not dealing with a supernatural being. Of course, we could have guessed that, but this is Star Trek. They don't do that. But we still kind of don't know what we're dealing. I mean, that doesn't mean we know what we're dealing with either. It could be a time traveler. It could be a super advanced race. Sounds like right now they're leaning towards a time traveler who's coming from the future to tinker with the past to make things go their way. And that is not unprecedented in Star Trek. They've done that kind of storyline before in Enterprise, where they were dealing with a temporal Cold War, when you had competing factions trying to manipulate the past to try to make things go their way. And so we've seen that sort of thing before, and it didn't go over particularly well with the fans. And frankly, I felt like somehow it undermined the integrity of the show. It just felt like it trivialized the events of the show in a weird way. It didn't really work that well for me. But I don't know. Some people liked it, I guess. But
interesting, yeah. So it's more the Red Angel or the time travel, or just it all together that you didn't like?
The idea that it's a time traveler. Now we don't know that it's a time traveler, but they're starting to speculate maybe that's what we're looking at.
What if Spock is the time traveler? Will that be weird? Will that work?
Well, it'd be interesting to see where they're going with that. Like he's the time traveler from when, and from what universe? Because we know he's kind of done some time travel and some universe jumping and that sort of thing. So
yeah, interesting. We know he's looking into it at the very least. The Vulture column, this one he says. Let's see. He says, later Saru will note that the Red Angel appeared to be a humanoid wearing a mechanized suit, which leads me to believe that a descendant of Dr. Otto Octavius has finally figured out how to use his inventions for good, at least what passes for good right now. He says, as Tyler, who has mercifully put away his man bun for the time being, points out, just because...
riding him for that man bun, yeah.
Just because some mysterious uber-powerful force is working in your favor today doesn't mean that force ought to be trusted as a net positive. After all, as any time travel movie or show likes to relentlessly preach, it can be downright deadly to mess with the space-time continuum. So, yeah, it's an interesting thing. I'm curious. I mean, I do love time travel stories. There's just one of my favorite tropes, I guess, of storytelling. I think they're so fun, and maybe that's why I kind of got into Doctor Who. I just really enjoy it. It's fun. And
there's no shortage of it in Trek. So
yeah, so I'm curious to see where it goes.
yeah,
And I can see it not being everyone's favorite. It does tend to get pretty convoluted, and you definitely need a suspension of disbelief when it comes to any kind of time travel story.
and again with Star Trek, it can be a bit of a crutch. I mean, you can sort of see how that could be. You've got you've got this weekly television as a grind, and especially in the old way they did it, where they had to produce like 26 episodes a season or whatever. I can understand that you start going to the well of ideas, and somehow time travel has a way of continuing to present itself as fresh. So yeah.
So then the Sirana says to talks to Saru and decides to stay with the Kelpians, with her people, and she tells him, "You and the Red Angel brought us hope." So that's
right. So at least he's on good terms with his people.
Yes, which is good. And so then the other story that you have mixed in with all of this, and the B story, I guess, is so Culber is alive, and like you had said, he is basically almost like a resurrected version of himself. There's a famous scar that he had once had that now he doesn't have, and he's basically perfect from what this seems like. Somehow it almost seems too good to be true. I feel like he's gonna end up being that. I still feel like by the end of the season that Stamets is gonna have to say goodbye. That this is not.
I hope you're right. Yeah, I hope you're right.
I don't know.
And that it's not the wonderful news that we think it is. Yeah, I kind of hope you're right. I hope they have something more interesting and complex up their sleeves with this.
I hope so. Yeah, because it kind of reminded me a little bit of this episode of Doctor Who this last season, where there was this alternate dimension where the characters were kind of tempted to spend they could spend like all of eternity with their loved ones who'd passed on, but like they were not progressing like at all. And but it was just like so tempting to be with people that you miss so much, but it wasn't really like living.
Like a Mirror of Erised kind of situation.
Yes, exactly. And I could kind of picture this being sort of like this. I feel like there's going to end up being something weird about him, something strange, and it's gonna he's still gonna end up having to say goodbye. That seems like it would be a really good story.
Yeah, resurrection always has a price, and yeah.
Yeah. So that was the main part. Yeah, you did have some things with Tyler, just a little bit of him, and in this, you saw him a little bit in here becoming more ingratiated in the Discovery, and then you have Burnham at the end after she sees what's happened with Saru. She decides to go home to Vulcan and try to.
Oh well, yeah. The Red Angel signals appear there. I think that's why they're going.
Yes, and so that was basically the end of the episode, and I think that I liked it. I thought it was a pretty good episode. I liked I thought that Doug Jones did a really good job as Saru. I liked getting to know his backstory and his character, and I thought that that the whole idea of the savior and these people that had been sort of manipulated into obedience and then was well done and interesting. And so I enjoyed this episode quite a bit.
Yeah, no, I did too. I'm to kind of go back to what I said at the beginning of like my beginning to develop my thoughts on this is that I feel like that what I'm starting to notice about the show and not just the aesthetics, but also the characters and the way they interact and the way and the decisions they make, it's reminding me more and more all the time of the original series. And I can see why a lot of the Trekkies who became Trekkies through Next Gen and that whole series of spin-offs and that generation of shows would be kind of put off by Discovery, because it does have a different feel and sensibility to it, but it's different in a way that's familiar if you've watched a lot of the original series.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I can see that. I've watched more of. I really haven't watched hardly any of Next Generation, but when I watched the original series, I could definitely see that. I mean, it's obviously darker, it's more R-rated, but as far as themes and tones, I think that's definitely true. And so,
and kind of just the world that they inhabit, or the universe, the galaxy that they inhabit.
Yeah,
it feels that way. And another cool thing, like I keep going back to how the Klingons are different, and what I like about them this time is that they feel like original series Klingons to me, and something that none of the other shows can say. And like in terms of the decisions they make, and now with Ash Tyler being kind of a Klingon, and but looking like a human, he looks like an old Klingon, like he does. He looks like one of the original series Klingons. He would have been, he could have easily been cast as an original series Klingon. He would be comfortable in that uniform.
Yeah.
So I'm getting a kick out of that, and also like the sort of like I had a revelation like as I was watching him bicker with Pike, like, oh, you know what this is? This is like if they somehow could have had a Klingon crew member in the original series. This is what he'd be like. This is how he'd react to things. This is how he would respond to these different situations. And this is where he would kind of be at odds with the, sort of swashbuckling of a Starfleet captain kind of stuff.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I think so. I can see that. I think the only thing I guess I don't like about the Klingon parts is I must say I'm not a big fan of the sensuality. That's just I don't know. I just feel like those episodes have been weird. They just haven't been my favorite. And I think that's a little off-putting to me. Like I don't know. But yeah.
Well, but on the other hand, I like what I like about that is that at least we see a side of them that isn't just murder,
Yeah.
And worshiping murder.
Yeah, I can see that. Well, the next 2 episodes are going to be Light and Shadows, and then If Memory Serves. So, we'll see what's coming up next. So, yeah, there's 11 episodes in this season. So we'll probably just do we'll probably do 3 more episodes of, I'm guessing, the podcast. We'll just do the finale maybe on his own, and we'll do 2 more of these doubles, and it should be really fun. So thanks so much for talking about it. I always enjoy these discussions.
My pleasure.
Yes. And so where can people find you?
I'm on Twitter at Almano Roboto, and see, you can, or at Happy Place Poems.
Great. Yes, and I'll have a link to all of that in the description section. People can definitely check out that, and you can follow me at Rachel's Reviews, all of our social media, and if you can put your ratings and reviews on iTunes, really appreciate it, of the podcast. And if you are watching or listening on YouTube, give us a thumbs up, that is, and a subscription. That really helps us out. And so thanks so much again, and we will talk again in 2 weeks.
Sounds good.
Okay, bye.